Hey race fans, and welcome back. I'm excited to share an interview that we did with Greg Hovesen from last month. Greg is a current driver for Echelon Simsport and finished inside the top 10 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge Canada earlier this year. We take a look at Greg's early racing career in karts, what it takes to make it work in modern day racing, and of course, his more recent switch into sim racing. Okay, let's jump in. Greg, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's awesome to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's jump into it. So before we get into your driving career, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm 25 years old, from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I have a younger brother, and sim racing takes up a lot of my time.
Yeah, no, I bet from a fellow sim racer, I know what you mean. Although I think the hours you've been putting in the last 6 months probably have eclipsed mine. But you know, with two kids, do my best. So we met through sim racing last year, but I know from our early conversations that you've done plenty of racing in the real world as well. So when did you first get onto a racetrack? Is it a family thing? Like, what's the story there?
Well, I guess my first memories of racing would be at the Toronto Indy in downtown Toronto. I think I have been to every single one every year since I was of the age of 3, I believe, probably still in a stroller at that time. It was my
Amazing.
dad's big hobby. He was very much into car racing, and then I guess I bit the hook, and it very much took off.
Nice. So dad's influence that kind of got you into karting at a young age, I guess.
That's exactly right. So I think my first time in a go-kart would have been at 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
Little Honda, basically lawnmower engine. I think probably 4.5 HP at that time, so very little putts. But you take it to the track. The kid wasn't too afraid of it, and
Yeah.
it spirals from there, and it happens very quickly.
So what's your first memory? Do you can you remember your mindset? Were you like itching to get in? Like, can you even remember the first time? Because I mean, it's pretty young. Like I have a kid who's 5 years old, so he's coming up to 6 actually, and I would love to get him in a go-kart, but I was kind of thinking like, would he even remember at this age? I don't know.
Yeah, well, the issue was that we always had the radio flyer pedal go-karts,
Okay.
myself and my younger brother. At that time, it would have just been me,
Yep.
tearing up the city block at 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, well, we got to go
Amazing.
quicker now. So I would definitely say I was conscious and aware, and very much remember the sort of first time I went and did it. It was in a parking lot at Warden subway station in Toronto. I remember it vividly, to be honest.
Love it. Love it. Did your brother catch the bug as well? I mean, I imagine, seeing you do it, kind of a brotherly thing. I mean, I have a younger brother too. We didn't get into karting together, but there was lots of healthy competition, let's say.
So yeah, myself being the older by 3 years, got a little bit of experience before him. But with younger brothers, they always get to start things a little bit earlier. So,
That's right.
if we're starting, I guess, competitive, more like house league racing at around the age of 7, 8. He started it at 6 or 7 type thing. So
Gotcha.
I guess that 1 year earlier than I did, just because we knew a bit more at that point.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember having a younger brother too, and my frustration was I felt like I would always clear the way, and then he would end up being better than me once he kind of physically caught me up. But how was it for you and your brother in the racing world? Like, did you have more of a passion for it? Did he catch you up? Like, how did that evolve as you were growing up?
I definitely say that I was the more passionate one.
Okay.
This is definitely more my domain compared to him. However, we both got to more or less the same level of top tier competition, and we both exited the sport at the same time. So yeah, like I said, I definitely was more the passionate one, but being the younger brother and me being able to help him, or the older brother help out the younger brother and whatnot, it was was a great thing we got to do basically every weekend.
Yeah, what a fantastic thing to do with your brother. That's awesome. Let's maybe talk through the tiers for people who don't understand. Actually, I'm not super aware of the karting tiers. I mean, you hear of Formula One drivers talking about like that karting experience, being the proving ground as they're moving up. What is the setup in Canada? What are the kind of levels? Like, when does it become national? Like, yeah, give us a bit of insight to that.
Gotcha. So, yeah, it starts as basic as just a little putt-putt go-kart in a parking lot, or it can start as, I guess, close to fully competitive as you want. It's a money sport at the end of the day. But
Of course.
when you're starting at a young age, it would basically go from that parking lot adventure to like a rookie day, which would be sort of beginning
Okay.
of a club. A club is something that you would just join, entry fee for the season, etc. Blah 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 blah, and you would go through some rookie training, get some more understanding of safety procedures, etc. Because at this point we're racing. It's
Yep.
not just driving around in circles.
Yep.
So it would start off at the club level, and that would have anybody from the 4 or 5 year olds all the way up to the 60-year-olds. There's
Okay.
divisions for
Okay.
everybody.
Yep. Love it.
It's just you based off of your age, skill, whatever, etc.
Yep.
You're partitioned, and then you will go to something called regional level, which would be more or less, we'll call it in Ontario.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
so there would be multiple Ontario regional championships. After that, you would move up to either Eastern Canadian Karting Championships or the Western Canadian Karting Championships, so more or
Got
less
it.
a split between the country. And then after that, it would get to the national level, of course, where it's the national championship level, if you will, or
Hmm.
going elsewhere, as in the States, which I had done, and other places around the world, basically. So the minute you get to fighting at the top of your nation, you go elsewhere.
Nice, nice. So, like, how did you find that journey? Did you ever feel like you hit a ceiling? I mean, you said it's a money sport. We hear about that all the time. Sadly, from modern Formula One drivers, the huge advantage if you've got financial backing from a young age. But how was your rise up that? Did your ability push you through? Were there tougher periods or, kind of levels that were a struggle to break through, or was it kind of a fairly steady rise for you?
Yeah, so I definitely say I am very privileged to have been able to do it in the first place. But by no means were we the richest people in the paddock.
Hmm.
I would say we struggled a lot. There was a lot of sacrifice.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's not easy with a family putting two people, like two drivers through it, myself and my brother as well. And it was all basically done by my family, hard work.
Yep.
The race weekends I wasn't racing, I'd be working with my dad. He's a general
Yep.
contractor, and I'd help out there to help him out on the weekends that we had
Yep.
off as a team.
Yep.
Because he was my wrench the whole time. He was
Yep.
the psychologist. He was
Yep.
the engineer. The whole thing. That my dad
Yep.
was a rock star, and then my mom was a really big support as well. She
Yep.
didn't love it all. She didn't like her baby driving around in a flying bomb at the age of whatever.
Understandable.
But
Understandable.
that's I guess a mother's role.
Yeah.
And they don't grow out of it either, I can tell you.
No,
Uh,
I bet. I bet. But it
um,
takes a family, I guess.
exactly,
That's kind of what
exactly.
it takes to get through.
And then it basically got to a stage where I got more or less good enough or at a level where factory support came a thing, and that was
Okay.
at the end of my karting career. I guess we'll call it the last year and a half, 2 years.
Sure.
And that was when we were testing prototype parts and whatnot from like
Interesting.
so it got to a higher level than just
Yep.
my dad driving down the highway with our 16-foot trailer. Now this
Yep.
was the big double decker trailer with all the support you could ask for, the data, the et cetera, et
Okay.
cetera. And oh, don't worry about it. We'll just handle this right now, and we'll
Okay.
talk about it later type conversation rather than, oh, well, we can't afford to put a new axle in the go kart. We're going
Yeah.
home this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it got to that level, and I think at this point it's either that, or you just gotta be really, really wealthy.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And it's such a shame that, I mean, motorsport, it's maybe one of the toughest ones given the investment that has to happen in the equipment. But I mean, I think there's a lot of sports these days where just money makes such a big difference. And it's fair to say, like, some talent can get picked up, but a lot, will get lost in the wash just for being unlucky, wrong place, wrong time type of thing. But I mean, awesome story to hear, Greg. Great to hear, family was invested, you and the family were able to kind of get so far with it. Like, just super cool. Obviously translates to sim racing, as we're going to talk about, because you are pretty rapid on the track, which is cool. But you didn't just finish there as a driver in the real world, right? You spent some time, I don't want to say as a mechanic. Maybe you can kind of take me through it. But I know you ran with some teams for a little while, and when you told me about that earlier in the year, I was super interested in that part of your kind of driving racing career, if you like, at that stage.
Yeah, well, I guess the way it started off with the team I guess hooked on with Exclusive Autosport was when I was actually driving at Mossport for my, I guess, 2 years of car racing. I had always followed them as one of Canada's best teams, up and coming teams. I was racing my Formula V at the time, watching the bigger guys, and saying, okay, maybe one day we'll be able to be there. And then over the years, I kept following progress. Of course, finished racing, went to university, made that decision instead.
Yep.
Um, I basically reached out for one of the summers in the middle of my physics degree, and I said, "Let me come move to Montreal, and I'll work for you as a junior engineer."
That's awesome.
And yeah, they took me under,
Hmm.
and I learned a ton engineering the Formula 1600 cars up here in Canada. We
Yep.
were lucky to win all three championships we entered that
Oh, I didn't know
season.
that. That's awesome. Wow.
Um, I was, of course, not making all the big decisions. However, I still feel I played an integral part nonetheless.
Oh, for sure.
And then it sort of spiraled from there to working basically all the way up to sort of junior engineering and some wrenching as well, all the way up to Indy Lights cars.
Wow.
So
Wow, that's
I've
awesome.
had my hands in the lowest of, I guess, motorsports or car racing in
Hmm.
Canada for the open wheel space, with myself being a Formula 1200 driver, and then all the way
Yep.
up to Indy Lights, which,
Amazing.
I have basically hit every stage.
Yeah. And was it much of a jump to lean more into that mechanical space, or as a driver that is running karts, etc.? Is that just a muscle you build and are interested in because you know the impact it has when you are driving? Like, is it? I'm just kind of wondering because for me, I love the driving part. I know very little about the mechanical, in real life or even in the sim when it comes to setups. But is that just a muscle that drivers need to learn, and therefore you kind of get into, or if some drivers love that stuff, and some are like, hey, I need a team that's going to set this thing up the way I kind of want it, but I don't necessarily have the full
Yeah.
understanding myself.
For sure, it's a per basis thing.
Okay,
I'm definitely a nerd.
got it.
I'm a
Yeah,
geek. I have a physics degree. Like
yeah,
I'm geeky in that regard. But
gotcha.
I'll definitely say that I'm just a product of my environment. It wasn't easy
Yep.
racing when I was young, so I wasn't the kid running, having fun with the kids. I was working on the cart with dad, preparing it,
Yeah, phenomenal,
grinding,
phenomenal.
turning the wrenches, doing all that at a
Yep.
very young age. So I always envied the kids that got to screw around and enjoy themselves. But here now I've been able to use, I guess, what I learned there as the first building block to something
Yep.
way bigger than they would have even imagined. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a fallacy, isn't it? When you're younger, you kind of always want to be the kids that can screw around, but then once you get to a certain age, you realize that's not the kid you wanted to be back then. And if you were that kid, fair enough, that's all good. But if you're able to focus on something, be it sport, be it education, be it whatever it is at that younger age, man, the potential you're able to grow in that space through those formative years is huge. So good on you for getting that focus, because man, it is not easy.
no.
Like in those kind of like kid years, teenage years, distractions are wild. It's probably even worse now than it was when I was younger. But yeah, good on you for that. Kind of love
Cheers.
hearing about that focus. I was going to ask you, what do you miss from the real world? But you still have a race car, right? Which I guess makes a visit to a track from time to time.
Yeah, from time to time. So I guess leading back to the grassroots of motorsports, my dad is one of the race directors at the Toronto Kart Club currently. There's
Awesome.
a track up just at Brecon Motorsports Park. It's just by Lake Simcoe here in Ontario, and there's enough room to get the car out there. So for
Perfect.
fun little weekends for the kids, if you will, a little give back showboat show, drive the car
Yep.
around. But I try to plan. I'm planning at least to get it out by September of this year and just do a one-off
Awesome.
race. We'll see if it all works out. The car
Yep.
is basically completely done, but I had a big wreck a couple of years ago, so it was
Okay.
basically redone from scrap
Gotcha.
again, or from
Gotcha.
the bottom. So it's
Yep.
sort of been now a babied life project rather than we're going back next weekend,
Yeah, gotcha. Got to do the rebuild, got to make sure it's working right.
Yeah, and
I'm with you.
then managing work and finishing degrees and all that. That's just how
Yeah.
life goes, right?
Life gets busy.
Yeah.
Life gets busy for sure. So, Greg, what was the motivation after the real life racing to jump into sim racing? And if I'm right, there was probably a bit of a gap between that from when you kind of finished karting, and were doing the regular racing and then into sim racing. So talk me through that.
So yeah, I guess the karting was up until like the age of 13. Open wheel race cars from 15 to 17, we'll call it, and then from then on, I went to school. Like I said, then started working as a junior engineer with Exclusive Autosport, and then I guess that took me about 3 years. So I think basically the full-time race engineer life that I was going for came to a halt with the pandemic. I had to move back to Canada. I was living sort of 50-50, if you will, or the plan was to do 3 or 4 weeks in the States at the time, going through hotels, doing the circus run, right? Because that's what motorsports is when you're part of the crew. It's not as flashy flying in the private jet back to the races, right? So, you're testing midweek, you're doing all that stuff. So that all, like I said, came to a halt with the pandemic. It didn't make sense for me and my support staff around me, family, friends, relationships at the time,
Of course.
to make the commitment to go live basically in Indianapolis. So I stayed back, finished my degree, etc. I dabbled here and there again after the pandemic. I still do, but not on a full-time thing. So it basically was like I got all of racing stripped from me really quickly, and then waited throughout the pandemic, tried to weigh out my options. And then I basically got to a stage where it was like, okay, pandemic's almost done. I'm basically almost done school as well. I don't see myself going back to the racing world full time. So how do I scratch the nerve, if you will? And then iRacing has been something that I bugged my dad for when I was 12, to be honest. Like, I remember it back when I was a karting kid.
Okay.
Right?
So you knew it back in the day.
I knew it existed, and then my sensible father, it's too early, it'll cost way too much money, who knows if the game will exist forever, blah, 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 blah. The hardware is all so much money at the time, it's crap at the time,
That's
it's
very true.
all that at the time, right? So what would that be? Almost like 13 years ago, if you will, 10 years ago. So things progressed, and I was like, you know what? I used to watch YouTube videos. I used to be that nerdy kid. I wasn't, so I wasn't watching the Call of Duty. I was watching iRacing on YouTube back then. Then it was like, okay, well, now here we're doing it. We're just going to sign up and we're going to send it. And here we are.
And it was only iRacing. I've got a bit of insight to kind of how I got into sim racing on my end. What did I start with? So I was PS4, probably even back to PS3, but that was a while ago. But PS4 was the first time I bought a wheel and pedals, terrible, and was like sofa and something to jam my pedals up. I think like a little box in front of the telly. Did it on a huge widescreen TV, and I was running Gran Turismo. So it wasn't particularly realistic, but that was my entry point. And it took me, I I kind of went through all of the sims before I got to iRacing. I don't know if it was a lack of knowledge at the time, but I was definitely more of a sim K driver. But then I liked the idea of this realism. But it took me, I think I did a Assetto Corsa first after Gran Turismo, but again, still PS4. Then ACC, still PS4. And of course, that was kind of fun. Started to do a little bit of online there, but still had kind of a junk setup. And then eventually moved and started playing those games on a PC and built a PC. That was kind of cool. But iRacing, for some reason, I think because the online element was so big, and that was a bit scary for me because it wasn't like one player doing it on my own and trying to beat challenges. It was like, okay, I'm racing with real people. It took me at least 1 to 2 years of other sim racing before I had even the confidence to enter a practice session. But it sounds like for you, you just iRacing was always the one. Like,
Well,
was it the
yes
realism?
no.
Was it?
I'll say that at least.
Okay, tell me.
I did have an Xbox, so I had Project Cars.
Project Cars, yeah, that's the one.
The Logitech G920, which is the Xbox of the G29, whatever. It's just the variant. Did that for, I don't know, not just for fun, basically. It was strap it to the desk and send it. Then with what was it, like 60-inch, 60 hertz TV type thing, just right in your face. And I was top of the world there, but it wasn't competitive. I have a very competitive edge to me. I've played sports my whole life, all while karting and whatnot, all the way through university as well. Played varsity rugby, so it was like I've always been the competitive guy. And then just doing lap times, beating myself was fun. Yeah. Then comparing it to my brother when he would come to my room and, hey, try it. But other than that, how do I know, right? So when, like you said, the big online element to it, I was like, yes, I need to beat real people.
Yep. And so how was the transition? I mean, there's other videos on YouTube that will talk about, the loss of some of the senses, obviously, from real world to sim. I can appreciate that, but I've never been a race driver, so I don't have the full understanding. But, when you got into iRacing, it's a true sim. All right, the graphics, a bit up and down compared to some of the others, but the realism is there. Was there anything that caught you by surprise? Like, how was the transition? Were you instantly fast? Did it take time? Like, talk us through that.
Well, I guess the difference would be, I know all IRL drivers say it. It's the seat of the pants sensation. It's I know I'm at a certain yaw angle, a certain slip rate angle. You really feel it as a sense rather than how can I decipher this wheelbase in my hands, in my wrist. You feel the car bounce. You feel it. It's way wavier. That's why people like the motion, but that also isn't exact either. So, you'll never be able to replicate the seat of the pants sensation. And I wouldn't say I was the smoothest of drivers in the world in real life. I thrashed carts and cars around, I'd say, a bit more aggressive style. And that really bit me coming to sim racing, to be honest.
Interesting.
Because in a real car, I'd be able to feel the car slipping and, just barely breaking the limit. But in the sim, I didn't know how that felt. I didn't know how the sim would tell me that. So I would always burn the front tire. I'd be understeering all over the place, thinking, why isn't it turning? I feel it's heavy. It feels loaded. All the science behind it. I'm like, it should work, but it isn't. And then sort of started settling down, backing corners up a little bit, not overdrive. And then work back forward again to the threshold. And I'd say my rookie career was longer than it should have been due to my lack of intelligence, not pace. I think
I'm with you.
It's the classic lots of pace, no brains conversation, and that was probably me in the beginning. Going for silly moves, not fully maybe accepting that we're trying to make iRacing as realistic as possible. What's a door bang and ripping this guy's fender off? Oops. That you can have that mentality as well. And I feel that mixed with maybe my own arrogance being, oh, I know how to do this, I'm good at this, and
Yeah.
then just, oh, these
Yeah.
guys are
I
just
can see that.
noobs, whatever. I was the noob too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just so happens that I had a bit more noob or bit more pace than noob pace. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
the beginning, yeah, pace wasn't the problem. It was just
Okay.
intelligence.
So you lose the seat of pantsing, which I get. I mean, like I said, I've driven cars around tracks, never been a race driver, but can certainly understand that lack of G-forces, stuff like that. I mean, when I got a butt kicker plugged in, again, doesn't solve all the problems, but it gave me a bit more of a sensation for the car moving around under bumps or feeling that. So that helped a little bit. But as you said, you can't replace G-forces, even with a motion rig. Now, here's a question for you. So it's always been very clear to me that IRL drivers are obviously bringing huge talent into the sim racing world and are fast generally. You're right. Mentality of treating it not like a video game is important, but when you get past that hump, the skill set to me appears at least to be very transferable, which makes perfect sense because you can make a sim feel pretty close to a real car without the G-forces. But now you've sim raced for quite a while. Does anything work the other way? And I know you're not racing tons IRL right now, but what would be your reflection on that? You talked about maybe needing to be a little bit smoother in the sim versus your driving style in real life. Like, would your IRL driving style reflect that now? Do you think, or would you just default back to how you like driving a car, kind of previously?
That's a good question. I'd say probably it's a yes and no.
Okay.
The sim really does punish lack of precision at the end of the day.
Yes.
In the real
Yes.
world, you can get away with a little bit more, I'd say. You
Okay.
can, I wouldn't say catch more slides and all that jazz, because we're not out here trying to drift. It's still road racing
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
just going that little bit over the limit is more possible in real life, I'd say, than in
Yeah.
the sim, because the sim, you're so dependent on how the tire's modeled that the minute
Yes. True.
you,
True.
I guess, break a threshold in however they're modeled, and everything goes
Yeah.
to the bin. In real life, the tire drop does exist. Hell yeah, the Formula V's, we really start to understeer by the end of races. But that's
Okay. Okay.
it's tire drop is a legitimate thing. It's just the
Okay.
rate at which mistakes are punished, I'd say, is
Mm-hmm.
more amplified in sim. So that's why you'll see
Yep.
so many sim drivers all so very, 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 very close. It's A, the infinite amount of practice laps you can do, and
Yep.
B, the precision has to be so perfect. In real
Yeah.
life, you can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
away with losing a tenth because there's
Yep.
only 7 guys, 8, whatever, that are within your range. With the sim and you're way up at the top, it forces you to be that
Yeah.
picture precision perfect. So
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah.
going from sim back to driving a real car, I would probably be a bit more precise, I'd say, and maybe be a
Yep.
bit more cognizant of those micro mistakes, if you will, and try and iron them out.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Here's one for you. Now you've got a ton of experience IRL, ton of experience in the sim. Which do you think you're faster in? I mean, it's a question you can never really know the answer to, but how would it like if I asked you that question? What do you think the answer is?
Um, I don't know. I might even say real life, to be honest,
Okay.
just because I would say I'm a racing driver first. Well, I know that's maybe arrogant, but a real life racing driver, I know what
Mm-hmm.
a car does based off of how it feels, not by
Yep.
how I'm being given information by a device.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
but I think Verstappen made a good point. I know me quoting the big man here, but it takes IRL drivers just maybe a little bit longer to get up to that ultimate pace of sim racing drivers, because sim racing drivers don't have the assumption of what real life drivers have. I assume it should
Interesting.
feel a certain way in sim, but it might
Yep.
not, just because of how
Yep.
physics are modeled. It's never going to be perfect. It can't be. But an
Yep.
IRL driver will have an assumption, whereas the sim racing driver is like, "Oh, this is how it feels." It's
Yeah.
it's a,
That's all they know. That's what
it's a
they've
little bit
learned.
different in
They've
that
grown up
regard.
on that.
So yeah, I feel like maybe I can get rid of that assumption to a degree, but hey,
Yep.
there's instinct at the end of the day, and you can't always take that out of somebody either. So
Oh.
yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I think I'll stick with probably IRL, but But yeah, I think I'm a good shout here too.
Yeah. No, you're fast in my terms, buddy. I can tell you that. Let's jump into let's just say like this year's focus as a sim racing driver. And I know there's one league in particular or one series in particular that you've put a lot of time into. So the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge Canada. Talk us through that. How did you get involved? What was it like? What was your experience? I just know for many months that was consuming a lot of time. Love to hear a bit more about it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start off with how I first even learned about the series.
Mm,
I started iRacing June 30th of 2021. Got through rookies
okay.
really quickly, and then didn't race again until like Christmas break when I was more
Okay.
or less off of school again and finished
Yeah.
school. And then I guess it was around November of 21. I think that's right. Yeah, 21. Maybe I started taking it a little bit more seriously. I wasn't by no
Okay.
means a rock star, but just changing the approach to what this
Yeah.
whole thing is to me. And I'm pretty active on Twitch. I like watching live
Yeah.
streams, etc. And I noticed that there was a Porsche Canada live stream, and I was like, "Wow, how
Yeah.
cool is that?" That would have been or March of 22 now. So I guess 3 or 4 months
Okay.
after
Yeah.
my commitment to myself of taking things a little differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe, hey, you know what? I think I can do that. One day that would be cool. Like I should strive for
Okay.
that. So it was
Yeah.
365 of sort of thinking about, hey, let's do this and let's take the positive steps
Okay.
forward and whatnot, and
Yep.
and get into this. So the way it worked was through iRacing's time trial functionality in the service
Yeah, that's
itself.
right.
The top 42 drivers in the country
Mm-hmm.
were evaluated over a combined time of 3 circuits, that being
Yep.
Spa, Sebring,
Yep.
and Canadian Tire Motorsports Park or Mosport.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I was able to. It was a 2-week period, unlimited attempts
Mm-hmm.
of single laps, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to qualify 15th in the country, or out of all of whoever entered. I don't forget. I don't remember the
It's
exact
good.
number of who completed the, I guess, application process, but
Mm-hmm.
my combined time was 15th in the standing. So I was pretty pleased with that. To be fair,
Yeah. I mean, the standard was high. I
yeah.
mean, I watched a lot of the races, and like you said a little bit earlier, the closeness of the racing, especially say within the top 5, top 10, maybe even all the way to the top 15, just goes to show how much all of you as top drivers can extract from the car. No one's building 10-second leads. There was a handful of races where someone might build a 1.5, 2 second gap, but it was great to watch because of that. There were incidents, mistakes happened, of course, bits and pieces, but I was so impressed with the precision, because it was nose to tail for a lot of you guys, throughout that kind of throughout the whole racing. And then so fast forward, qualified 15th, epic, 15 out of 42, and many more people are trying to get in than that, some of the best drivers that we have in Canada. And maybe talk us through, I know you were then assigned, or I'm not sure how that process worked, but you kind of then tagged to a dealership, and that's kind of how the series run. I thought that was kind of a neat way to do it. What was the period like between qualifying and then that first race? Like, what did you need to do as a driver and as a team member in that period?
So so I guess after it was Feb 1st to Feb 15 of this year were the qualifiers, and
Yep.
then between Feb 15 and I think it was March 1st, that 2-week
Oh, so it's
period
only a couple of weeks.
was
Okay,
was
so it wasn't
sort
long.
of the lull period. I knew I had made it. I knew I'm in. This is great. But I was waiting on assignment. So I was waiting for
Gotcha.
who I would drive for, whatever it may be. So within that period of time, me as a driver, I sort of just kept running laps. I knew the schedule already,
Yep.
so I could get my feet wet, if you will, but
Hmm.
nothing serious until the setup was provided, because this was a fixed setup series.
That's right, it
So
was.
any
Yes.
testing that I had done, I wouldn't say is useless, but not fully representative of what we were looking
Yep.
for, or what we would expect on a given lap.
Hmm. Hmm.
So once that was, I guess it started off with the email and whatnot of saying we're in and congrats and
Yep.
here's your information, find here, blah 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 blah. So I was assigned to Porsche of Halifax
Yep.
as one of their primary drivers, and
Hmm.
the other driver, who I would say is the primary driver, is Andrew Caron from just north of Montreal here in Canada.
Yep.
He was actually number one in the overall qualifiers for the top 42. So
Oh, you know what? I didn't know
yeah,
that actually.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow. Wow. I didn't
he got
realize. Okay.
stuck with mediocre 15th and him being P1. So yeah, I felt very honored to get selected by
Yep.
Halifax, to be able to work with such a talent, Andrew. Yeah, I feel like it all sort of just lined up really nicely. And
Did you know Andrew before? And I don't mean personally, but was he kind of on your radar as, a driver that you knew of?
yeah, so over time you learn who the big players are in sim
Yep.
racing. It's I'm not
Yep.
going to say it's the biggest thing in the world, nor is it the smallest either. But you can,
Hmm.
if you speak to the right people, you'll get a good understanding of the makeup of the industry.
Yep. Yep.
And from my research and whatever word of mouth, Andrew is part of our country's best team, Advanced Motorsports, and himself with a couple other guys, past series champions of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge Canada, are part
Hmm.
of that stable as well. So I felt very honored to be sort of welcomed in to the
Yep.
well, to work with them and do all the race prep with them as well. Because holy
Yep.
moly, did I ever learn a ton about iRacing and how you need to drive and about my flaws. I was,
Interesting.
I'm
Interesting.
I would say I'm a pretty decent driver nonetheless.
Hmm.
But holy
Hmm.
moly, there's a different level above me as well,
Wow.
and it really opened my eyes to my flaws. So yeah, very very grateful for that chance.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, making the comparison. So when I first drove with you in an endurance event, which would have been Daytona 24 hour, didn't get the result we wanted. But the thing I enjoyed most about that, I think, was all of the prep that we did together, because I would explain it in exactly the same terms, but obviously a bit of a lower level for me. But the prep required, how to prep, how to drive the car. I mean, Daytona's unique. You're setting it up for low drag, that created a different feel in the car that I was used to, so required a better technique for driving, which I hope some of it I have retained, some of it I still struggle with. But it's funny how you can get that knowledge and it can sort of give you this injection of pace when you can eventually kind of figure it out for yourself. For me, it's never an overnight thing. Someone can tell me what I'm doing wrong, I can see it in telemetry, and I can try and make the change, but it seems like it takes months really for me to fully adjust my driving style, to sort of get into that. But that's good to know that it happens at all levels. There's always someone better than
Yeah.
you. There's always someone who kind of has a perspective on how to do things better. Like, I assume there's still some room for individual driving styles, or in a sim, is there really just one fast way to do it? Like, what's your perspective when you were looking at you and Andrew's times? How well, telemetry, I should say. Like, were you trying to drive more like him, or were you just learning elements of his driving style that you thought would you could bring into yours?
Yeah, so that data to me was liquid gold. I That's what I
Yeah.
love reading. I'd say I'm proficient in data reading.
Hmm.
And there were things that I were able to pick up on that he did that didn't make sense, but also other parts that really did make sense. And I was like, wow, like
Okay.
I why didn't I think about that? Um, I feel like there is room for driving style on a per lap basis. Are we
Okay.
extracting one lap pace?
Hmm.
However, on an average, you're looking for best average race time. The maintenance laps, the management, if
Yep.
you will. I'd
Hmm.
say there is more or less just one way to do things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're
Okay.
overusing your tire or whatever
Yep.
throughout the race.
Okay.
But yeah, so for a quick hot lap, people can extract pace in places you could never imagine. But the next corner you do better. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter in that regard. That's why they even out. But you'll see certain corners characteristics, say maybe at a very low speed corner, I would be not as good at, because I would suffer from the exit traction, for example. But I was a little bit more comfortable with the high speed rotation in certain parts with the Porsche having the rear end rotating. I'm fine with a little bit of that. And so at the end of the day, the lap averaged out, but it was done a little bit differently. So yeah, that's why having a good control piece of data, your own data, and then a third party that you guys never even spoke to, and then compare those 3 lines of data, and you'll be able to truly maximize a pace, if you will. So yeah, I'm a big data believer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think we're lucky really in the sim racing world because, there's tons of telemetry apps. Garage 61 is the one I use. And a lot of people, the telemetry's up there for free. You can just go and take a look. I mean, it helps if you know the driver, I think, and you understand the level and their ability. But I think, once you've got drivers 5K, 6K plus, in the range that you're in, Greg, there, as you said, there's some sort of convergence happening there because you can't be a wild driver and just be able to get up there. You can get past 3K, I think, with having quite a lot of floors. 4K, you're definitely needing to iron most of them out. But to really grace the 6K plus heights, your driving has to be all round. You've got to be that solid driver. And so the beauty is, a lot of us can access that telemetry, whether we're in teams or kind of however it works. And as you said, it's right there. Look at braking points, look at steering angle, look at speed through the corners. And that's, I think, that's what I love about sim racing. And, prior to joining Echelon and getting access to, drivers such as yourself, Greg, and others in the team, I would do a lot of this through YouTube. I just watch the car and I would feel like I get a pretty good feel for it. And maybe you can, but what I didn't understand was how much more telemetry can give you and how honest it makes your driving. I won't get into it, but breaking points and all sorts of stuff, man, there is so much to learn. So that's one of the things I love about sim racing. There's always someone better and there's always ways to get there. And if you can put in the time, if you get the telemetry and you dial it in, man, there's talent matters, but I think for a lot of us there's improvements we can make just on the data that's available, which is pretty awesome. So for that series, I don't want to, the exact hours don't matter to me, but talk to me about that commitment week to week. And I think the races ran every 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember exactly, Greg, but what level of commitment did it require from you during that season for you to be operating at the level that you wanted to?
Well, going in, I didn't really know what I would do, to be honest. I didn't really have a plan. It was sort of like, okay, well, Andrew's driving right now, so I guess I better be getting after it too. That's sort of how it started, if you will. And then figured out more or less my own strategies throughout the season. But it was more or less get thrown in the deep end, follow the boys who have ironed out processes, and go from there. So the series was 8 rounds. And it was more or less 1 week on, what did it start off as? It was, the first week was week 1, then it was bye week, then it was 2 weeks in a row, then bye week, then 2 weeks in a row, then bye week. And then I think right at the end, it was just a bye week and the finale, if you will. So that's how they partitioned it. And I'd say on the races where we had the bye week in between, I found those weeks kind of, I don't know, not difficult, but I kind of didn't take them as seriously on those bye weeks. Like, you're supposed to, of course, because it is a bye week. But I felt like, well, why don't I just use this time a little bit better? And sort of maybe instead of doing 3 hours and 3 hours and 3 hour sessions, if you will, do 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and then by the end or right before race day, then get into the tough prep. So like you normally would. So we're just maybe that 1/10 quicker going into the real prep.
Gotcha.
And so I think per round, I'd say I was probably around, I don't know, maybe over 10 hours of driving. So we'll call that on a weekly basis. And then I was probably deciphering data for another 1.5 to 2 hours throughout those weeks. So I don't know, we'll call an overall commitment of I don't know, anywhere from 12 to 14 hours. But then I also had
Yeah.
weeks where I had more, and also weeks I had less. Um,
Yep.
I think I think
Yeah.
my I think if my numbers were right, I did the math a while ago, but it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
something of over the what I think 8 weeks with buys. I think it was
Hmm.
12 weeks total was the I guess
Yep.
commitment. I think I was over or close to 100 hours, maybe a bit more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
And
big
that's not
commitment,
even the
and I think,
best. And that's not even
yeah,
like really trying. I'm by no means am I, red line and all of those big massive teams.
yeah, yeah,
Some of these guys put
yeah,
in hours. Some of the competitors even in the Porsche Canada series were doing 16 hours, so
yeah,
it's all
yeah, yeah.
dependent on how you feel.
Of
Some
course.
people claim they only did 3 hours and just hopped in the sim, and it's
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm happy to be fully transparent with how much effort I had to put in just to be
Oh
there,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, you should be proud of it.
So,
I mean, it's a big commitment, a series like that. And if I remember rightly, obviously there's some races with some incidents, but I mean, I remember your results really getting steadily better. I mean, they, certainly were strong initially. You were usually finishing, above, say, your series qualification of 15th. You're getting close to that top 10. Obviously, a few races here and there were some challenges because I remember some crashes early on. There seemed to be a little bit of like early on in the series, more incidents than I might have expected. And then towards the end, I think it just seemed the racing cleaned up a little bit. But I mean, how do you rate your progress? Because you were knocking on the door of the top 10 and then you were in it towards the end. Like, I felt like you really had sort of, your level had taken a step from, say, the first race of the season, to the last race where, in terms of where you were. Like, is that how it felt for you? Is that kind of an accurate reflection?
yeah, I went into the, I guess, championship expecting to be in the top 20. That's where I wanted
Yep.
to be.
Okay.
Every race I wanted to
Yep.
be top 20.
Yep.
If you get spun, that happens. Pending there's no damage, I think I can maybe work my way back up. Top
Yep.
20s were
Yep.
always the goal, better half of the field. When I screwed up quali. Well, not as bad as Andrew, the first race of the year in Montreal.
I
Andrew didn't
remember
even
that.
get
Yeah.
a time in. He had to start at the back due to lap invalidations, but nonetheless, um, I felt like walking into or stepping into the first race. I felt prepared, but then when I saw the quali
Hmm.
times go down and I saw where I was, and I figured out like, holy crap, I was actually really nervous for this. Like I
Hmm.
tried to
Hmm.
brush it away. I tried, it's fine, it's just another race, blah blah blah. That mentality, But
Yep.
after the whole race finished and like the whole, I guess, event, and it was what midnight. I'm lying in my bed, like holy moly, that
Yep.
was way different than I thought it would be. I
Yeah.
felt like
Yeah.
I've always been. I feel like I could always do a quick lap.
Hmm.
My one lap pace is always pretty good. But
Hmm.
also with the series, the type of series it is, there's people who have better one lap, and that's just that.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
That's right.
and I've always more or less relied on racing ability, racecraft. I feel like I'm good in battling
Hmm.
people. If
Hmm.
you might have 2/10 on me, but if I'm in front of you, I'm gonna stay in front of you.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
feel
Yep.
like
Yep.
I'm decent at that. But progressing through the season, I really focused on getting quality down because I felt like that really hindered me.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
then with the format of the series being an open qualifier, it was hard having 42
Yeah.
cars on track at a time trying to find a hole.
That's right.
It's not F1 when you only
That's
get
right.
10 guys by the end.
Yeah.
There
That's right.
shouldn't be traffic jams then. But hey, with
No,
42,
that's right.
there's a lot. Um,
And drafting was a thing as well, right? That was I saw teammates going out together because you're giving away time if you can't pull that off. And I mean, I have in the Ivor series that I ran, with Spencer, just in practice outside of Ivor, we were on an open track trying to figure that out, and we have less experience, but even then was kind of hard to time it. I can draft you and then out, and then we'll swap around. I can't imagine trying to pull that off in a track of 40 plus cars, uh, in laps, out laps, all around you. I mean, do you and Andrew get that down, or was every race just you know, I don't want to say luck of the draw, but I mean, how predictable is it in qualifying, given you can only control the two of your cars and there's so much happening around you?
Yeah, we tried to work through it. I'd say I definitely lacked experience in that.
Okay.
The management of getting a slot and keeping up when I have to keep up, and that track position management is so key in qualifying.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah, I bet.
especially in the environment that it was 20 minutes open qualifier. You
Hmm.
couldn't tow, so you couldn't just escape the car. You would have to
That's
have your
right.
full
Yes,
in
that's
lap
right.
and box, get
Hmm.
out of the car, and then reset.
Yep.
So that whole process really came down to a big time crunch. It was 2 runs. You got out lap, prep lap, Q lap, box,
Yep.
and then out lap, prep lap, Q lap, finished. Like you
Wow.
and the
Yeah.
way the Porsche Cup is it's very tire dependent. So you really got to get the car
Yep.
into a window, or it's hell.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I tried to work with Andrew on it. He taught me some things. Certain tracks where dirty air was a big problem, like
Okay.
that we just didn't bother. Um,
Yep.
Red Bull Ring was a difficult one, just because the
Hmm.
long straights did matter, but that
Yep.
middle sector, the downhill lefts,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
the Porsche Cup couldn't follow there really well. So we decided to abandon
Interesting.
the whole idea. Other
Yeah.
teams got it right; they
Yeah.
were able to. We didn't. We
Okay.
didn't figure it out. Um,
Yeah.
but by the end
Fair
of the
enough.
season, we got um, I guess, our thing going, our mojo.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by
Yeah. Yeah.
Interlagos and Mossport, the final 2 rounds, I was, I think, sixth at Interlagos
Yeah.
and fourth
Yep.
at Mossport, which I was really, really
Yeah.
pleased
Phenomenal.
about.
Phenomenal.
Coming from,
Yeah.
qualifying 15th, 16th, 17th at the beginning to
Yep.
there, based off of just a lot of hard work and understanding the quality dynamic,
Hmm.
paid a lot, a lot.
Yeah, I bet. So I think I know the answer to this, but planning on running it again next season, and then maybe second question would be just overall reflections of this first season.
Uh, Answer to the first question for sure.
Yep.
Definitely, I'm
Thought
ready
so.
for, I guess, second season syndrome. I kind of
Hmm.
know how things are supposed to work. Bit,
Yep.
just a bit more knowledge.
Of
And I
course.
feel like I can open the season a bit better, rather than have the
Yeah.
first
Okay.
3 rounds of, oh my goodness, this is actually happening. I guess we're racing.
Yep.
Like a
Yep.
great example was starting on the front row for the feature at Sebring. It was the
Hmm.
second race of the season, and I was like, I'm second right now, and so
Yeah.
it happens. I blew the turn one, and it's just rookie things, and
Just how it goes.
if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can eliminate those for next season, I feel like maybe we can, instead of fighting for the top 10. Ultimately, I got ninth in the championship, but fight for a little
Which is
bit
excellent.
further up the ranks. Maybe top 5 even. The competition's so fierce. It's
Yeah, I was going to say that's what a great target to have, though. I mean, to have finished top 10, amazing result. And yeah, that's got to give you confidence for next season. Like you say, top 5. I mean, you are hustling with some phenomenal drivers there. And, in my eyes, you're a phenomenal driver, but, just those small margins from the guys at the front. But, well, I can't wait to see you in the next season. I love watching it this year. I have to say, they put on a great broadcast. The commentary team does a good job. The Twitch chat is pretty active. Out of all of the series that I've dabbled in watching, that was probably my favorite, actually. I mean, it helps having, a driver that in it, of course. But yeah, it's a good spectacle. I love the fact that it involves Porsche around the country. Just you can feel the level of investment they have in it. They really care about it. And the one thing it made me think actually is I wonder why other brands are not doing the same or doing something similar. It seems like this bit of a gap. I mean, sim racing is niche, like we all get that, but those of us that do it are car fanatics, and seeing a manufacturer put the time into a series like that to be able to bring the best drivers in a country into it, I mean, it says something, about the brand and about it. So yes, I'm excited for next season. Now, a couple of questions. One, I guess it's the same timing. Is it sort of early next year again? They run the same schedule?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it would probably be the same sort of thing. It would be
Okay.
February 1, basically, would be
Yep.
when the time trial opens, and it's open to anybody who's eligible. There's a big document on the webpage somewhere, and it'll tell you more there. I'm pretty sure if you just type in PESCC on Google, it will actually bring you directly to the first hit will be the iRacing page. So yeah, you're good.
All right, Greg. So to wrap up, what would be, let's say, the 2 pieces of advice for anyone who's thinking about getting into sim racing?
Do it. I very much loved my time, and I think this has turned into a lifelong thing for me. I feel like nothing comes quick in racing. The cars go fast, but when progression halts, it's hard to continue to progress because it's not very obvious anymore. It's micro adjustments. It's just trusting the process. Car racing, it's easy to find the seconds, impossible to find the tenths.
Very true.
That's just how it is. So I guess that's my first piece of advice is just trust the process. Speak to the right people, and don't be frustrated when you've done the same lap 500 times, because at that point, no one can take consistency away from you.
There you go. That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And then I guess my second piece of advice would be always try and surround yourself with better drivers. Always.
That's great.
It's key, to be honest, because I feel like it's a good way to figure out your flaws. You need people to point out where you fall short in areas that you would have never even thought.
That's right.
You got to always surround yourself with brighter people in the room. Don't be the dumbest guy in the room, but always make sure there's somebody smarter.
Yeah. Greg, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Evening time is racing time, so I appreciate you taking the time out of today's day to jump in with us. Super interesting to learn about, your racing journey. I knew quite a bit about your sim racing journey because I've watched you a lot recently. Really great to hear about the karting days. Appreciate you being pretty candid and transparent about, the family aspect, the growing up. That, really, really interesting. Good luck for qualifying for the Porsche Series next year. I guess it's a bit of a way off, but I can't wait to see you running in that again. It's been the highlight of what I've watched this year, certainly. As I said earlier, kind of a great series. For anyone that's wondering, you can catch Greg on Twitch, Skrilla Manila 5. There will be a link in the description below. Greg's often streaming, races, once or twice a week, so keep an eye on that. And for everyone, thank you for tuning in. So that was Greg Hovesen, driver for Echelon Simsport. My thanks again to Greg for sharing his story with us. We're working on a few more interviews, which we hope to get out to you over the coming months. So if you like the format or you have any suggestions for us, please let us know in the comments below. That's all for this one. We'll catch you on the grid.